Hey guys, say hi to GearWire magazine.
GearWire, thanks.
So this is our sound booth all torn down. We got a 12 by 8 sound booth. So assuming that the amp survives the burn rack that you saw well, then it comes over here. So this is our final assembly rack. And we've got it labeled here. This one's going to Norway. It's 230 volts. And it's all been approved and set up. So then what we're going to do is we're going to put it into cabinets. Let's put it into wood and make sure that it works. And then once you get into a cabinet, then you get into vibration issues. Some tubes really don't like to be vibrated. And so what we thought was a perfectly functioning amp, now we have to trash the tubes and start over again. And so it's a big process to get, again, it's a big investment. So we don't just slop it together. We really try to make it right, because it's a lot of money, and we appreciate that people spend a lot of money with us. Also, my biggest joke is I never want to see these amps again unless they're on TV. I don't like fixing amps at all. So then we put them into wood, we let them sit, we play them in. If they play in fine, we let them sit overnight, we play them again the next day. Because sometimes once they cool down and heat back up, then they'll start making bad things again. So if they clear all this, we clean them up, we have an air compressor over there, we blow them all out, we bag it, box it, and it goes out the shipping door. Yeah. And from that point on, it's just time to collect money. But that's our business in a very small nutshell.
Do you build to order primarily?
Yeah, we never build stock. Yeah. It's always for dealers. One of my biggest dealers is right over here. You should say hi to him. He's from The Hague in the Netherlands. Oh. And his giant dealer force does. We have a huge business in Europe. About 40% of our business is in Europe, which is kind of an honor because we're doing British type build. Yeah, right. This is a British build quality. Our cabinets are Baltic birch with half-blind dovetail joints in it, just like the old Marshall and Vox cabinets were.
And is the circuit design primarily this sort of like a Vox Marshall?
The circuit's really ours. I mean, we have stuff that's we have a couple of amps that are inspired by early amps, but we learned a lot in 40 years. Yeah. And so we start somewhere and then we just go way beyond it. But the transformer build, you've heard of a company called Radio Spares. It's an old English company that made really complex, like hi-fi quality transformers. And that's the secret sauce. But a lot of people don't like to do it because they cost like 4 times as much as regular transformers. But you're listening to an output transformer. So I don't want to skimp on that. Yeah. And so Mercury Magnetics makes us just fantastic, complicated, really nice transformers. And it's a British style build. We do have some American flavored amps, but it's really a British build. And so the fact that we have huge amount of traction in the UK, and then in Northern Europe especially. Robert's from Holland. We have another guy in Norway. I mean, these are my, it's like a third of my business with these 4 dealers that we have in Northern Europe. And so I take that as a special point of pride, that we're doing a European-style amp, and Europeans are embracing it. Not to say anything wrong with American amps. I lived in England for a couple of years, and at a very impressionable age. And so I just walked away with my ears tuned, and when I started learning about the guts of amps, I realized like the wood makes a difference. You got to use joinery on the cabinets because the wood is part of your sound. Nails don't sound very good. So no matter what anyone tells you, a cabinet that's made with proper joinery is going to resonate and vibrate more in sympathy with the speaker than a nail is going to. When you have nailed together wood, it's going to it's not musical.
Like
so
floorboards.
Yeah, I mean, anything's like that. And so, at every level we try to do these things. And our speakers are all, the highest grade Celestions that you can get. And because right now I don't think there's a competitor for them. But if there was, I'd use them. But, they perform outstandingly well. I never have to return them. They all sound the same. It's like, that's the kind of thing, someone's spending $3,000 on an amp. That's what you deserve. So there's some fun artifacts in here. Spare cabinet for Rick Nielson.
Yeah. Of course.
Rick Nielson.
I had to guess who it was.
This is one of my most favorite weekends ever. So Cheap Trick was playing here at the Hollywood Bowl for the 40th anniversary of Pepper. Yeah. And they couldn't get the right sound. And so I got a call from the Cheap Trick crew, and Rick Nielson wanted a couple of amps for the show. But we had to do this sort of last minute because it's Rick Nielson and he won't do it. Anything else. So they played at the Hollywood Bowl. Jeff Emmerich, the guy that engineered all the Beatles records, was there. Oh. And actually sat there going, "This is a lovely amp, mate." Going crazy. So they did all their Beatles shows with our stuff. So this is just a spare cab I keep for Rick because he's always calling me up going, "I need one right away." Okay. And so I got one. Don't worry. So we always keep an extra one here. There's a head shell we made for Brad Paisley, and then he told us right after that he changed his stage colors to blue. Thanks, Brad. That's just a joke. He's a great guy.
Can you talk a little bit about the aesthetic design? Like what kind of went into the aesthetic design of the amps?
Well, it's very interesting. I have a good friend of mine. His name is Bill Malone. He's a horror movie producer. Remember House on Haunted Hill and Tales from the Crypt and all that stuff? And he was my next door neighbor. And we were sitting around one night, and we were going to make the first amp just for Peter. And it was not a product. And he's like, well, what do you think? You know, what do you kind of go for? Because he's very Mac savvy and going to do all that stuff. I'm a business guy that uses PCs. And I said, well, I want something that's sort of vintage, and I like 60s hot rod kind of lines, but I want to look modern at the same time. And he goes off on this big rant about, he kind of dropped out of high school to go follow the Beatles when they came over. He said, you know, they came over with these black amps that had like metal vents on it and big rough handles on them, but then at the same time it had this old radio grill cloth on it. It was perfect combination of old and new. I said, yeah, that's kind of it. So if you look at the lines on these, like my first car was a 67 Mustang. So look at the vents on that head on the floor, right? That's the rear end of a 60s Mustang.
Right.
My favorite car from the 60s is a split window Corvette. So we kind of started there. And I like the idea of mixing metals. So we got a zinc logo. We have a brushed aluminum outer vent, and then a steel back screen on there. And that mixing metals gives us texture. It gives it an organic sort of feel. So just trying to hit all those buttons emotionally for me that make a difference. Never once thinking this is going to turn into a company or a product.
Right on.
It was just sort of like, let's just make one that's really killer. And then, so Peter took that first amp to a Cheryl rehearsal, and she said, I like that. Can I have one? I went, oh, okay, yeah, we'll make another one. And then the other guitar player wanted one. And within about 8 weeks, we had 25 orders from pros. I was still working. I was an IT guy. And I was getting calls at my desk from like Steve Miller and Peter Frampton and Joe Walsh. You know, and I was thinking it was my friends, you know, just having a laugh with me. Like, hey, Dan, it's Joe Walsh. How you doing, man? Oh, hey, Joe Walsh. Hey, what's up? You know, I want one of those amps, dude. I'm like, okay.
I'm working.
Yeah, can I call you back? Some guy said he's Joe Walsh. And, you know, it's one of those things. But literally, it just happened. It was just a runaway freight train, and here we are.
You ever have anybody tell you that, you know what, I don't like the way this looks at all. Make me something else.
No. There's one guy. And it's kind of funny because I know it's a risk doing a look like this. And again, we never thought it was going to be a product. It was just an amp for Peter. And what happens is, there's been maybe two guys. Oh, look at that, a button. There's been maybe two guys that said, can you make me one? Like, this is a cabinet I made without the centerpiece. Right. And when I made it, the guy looked at it and said, you know what, I like yours better. I'm like, okay, you know, we'll do that. But what I get now are compliments at the NAMM show, especially from wives that come up to me. They go, hey, I just want to thank you for this amp. Like, really? You like the amp? No, it's the only amp I'll let my husband keep in the house because it doesn't look like a dirty black box.
Right.
But I think most people get the sort of 60s cue, you know, from the lines. Like, they recognize sort of the hot rod feel from it. And there's some, you know, we just got lucky. I'd love to say I'm brilliant at it, but it's pure luck. You know, it's just pure luck. I'd love to take credit. Bill Malone is the guy who did the initial design on the computer and has a lot to do with it. So I just say I got smart people around me with good sensibilities, and we just made it all work. And Peter contributed a ton to the look and the final version of it. And, you know, so it's a group effort. But we got very lucky. But yeah, I would assume there's people that walk in and go, oh, I don't like that, but I don't really hear from them. You know, I hear a lot from people who are happy with their amp. And I actually have several touring bands that buy a ton of empty cabinets from us just to put them on the stage because they like them for decoration. I love selling stuff that takes no work at all.
Yeah.
That's great.